Hello, good morning and afternoon, depending on where in the world you are. Thanks for joining in here on Smart Money Culture TV. We are about to go live there on your TV. I'm just waiting for that cue in should be right about now. Waiting for that. We have an exciting show today. There is a lot going on in the world. As you know, we've just continued as everything unfolds. So we have this wild interview, of course, with our good friend Tucker, and we are live now. Welcome, Texas and Louisiana. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for joining us as well on X and on Facebook and YouTube with Crypto Cake. Shout out to Crypto Cake. Thanks, guys, so much. And we really are just really having a great time. 2 shows per day that we're doing here now. There's a lot going on. We have, of course, Trump has won his Supreme Court case. And that's it was really a slam dunk, right? I mean, nobody really thought that was going to do anything, I think. I mean, I don't know. I mean, that lawyer looked pretty green, pretty young guy. But those oral arguments were pretty weak, let's face it. It did just come out, though, an hour or so ago. I recorded a quick release of that, which I will play. I'll play now. Here it is right here. Let me just share this. And I talk about a little bit about how the effect that is going to have on everything. Make sure to follow me on X, guys, at Networks Manager. Major development in the Supreme Court case with Donald Trump and keeping him off the Colorado ballot. The Supreme Court has ruled unanimously against the Democrats' controversial efforts to unlawfully remove Donald J. Trump from the state ballot, declaring it both illegal and constitutional. SCOTUS has unequivocally rejected Colorado's attempts to exclude Trump, marking a significant setback for the Democrats and the uniparty swamp alliance. Justice Sotomayor has emphasized that President Trump has been denied due process regarding any allegations of insurrection. Meanwhile, Justice Kagan argues against one state unilaterally deciding who citizens across the nation can vote for, stating, "What's a state doing deciding who other citizens can vote for president?" Surprisingly, even Justice Kenesia Brown Jackson asserts that the president is not considered an officer of the United States, thereby rendering Section 3 inapplicable for him. Contrary to the narrative of Trump committing insurrection, the court issue resolves around the Democrat-controlled states' undemocratic, unconstitutional, and illegal attempts to obstruct Republican voters from choosing their preferred candidate. The recent Trump v. Anderson case appears to have been a turning point, exposing the deceptive tactics employed by the Democrats. While their efforts may persist, this development allows both sides of the political spectrum to recognize the manipulation that has unfolded in this country. Well, it's really pretty interesting, right? I mean, the thought that they were going to take him off the ballot. I mean, this is like a dream for a lot of these people. Apparently, it was a dream for these people in Colorado to go ahead and take him off the ballot. I think that in any country, that the person that the people want, it should be respected. It is the people's choice. So if the people are choosing Trump as the nominee, then he should be the nominee. Obviously, that's my stance. Of course, you have what's going on over there in Pakistan as well. In Pakistan, we have Imran Khan, who they have jailed. He is really hated by the CIA and the Mossad and the different intelligence agencies, and he is in jail right now. He was leading. There was some internet outages and everything else, and now the other guy is winning. So that win is definitely tainted. But these are the elections that we have around the world right now. You saw what happened with in Bolivia, as well as some of the other countries. And it is very important for us to really show up, to be present, and to vote correctly, and to also pay attention to what's going on and get involved, because they're going to be ballot harvesting and everything like crazy. I hope that we're able to have a fair election, but it does seem a bit far-fetched. I will be honest about that. So tech stocks are on a bit of a tear. I'm going to go right back over here to my screen here, and I will run over some of this news that I just put out over here. Some of the ones that I've been watching, guys, these are some new ones here. So Syntropy, NOIA, dollar NOIA up over 40%. This blockchain is transforming how blockchain data is accessed through its innovative data layer protocol. You can buy and sell this on KuCoin. It is open for Americans, and you can go to @costbitcoin.club to sign up with my referral link there, okay? Litecoin is up about over 2%, 2.33%. That is up. Ethereum is up as well. It's been flirting with 2,500, and I think maybe it will not hold it. I think probably we were due a bit of a pullback, but we'll see how all that plays out. Bitcoin having a ball today, up almost $2,000, 47,410. As I was typing this out, the price on it at the moment is here. BTC 47,350. You can see this impressive rise that we have here. Just look at that. Boom, like all the way up there. I mean, that is just really something else as that is rising there. So about the price it was that I said there. Gold is down a bit. It's currently trading at 2,034. The way that the gold price is figured out is through futures. That's how they set the price of gold. And you can get gold at cost. You can get it at the dealer cost at costmetals.club. Follow that for our referral link there. Silver down about 20 cents. Buy silver at cost as well. Same link at costmetals.club. So you have at costbitcoin.club and you have at costmetals.club there. President Putin on the U.S. dollar. We'll go over that a little bit in a bit. I thought this was really interesting. So AI, I don't know if you guys remember, but we had a bit of a shakeup, and I'll bring that right back in a minute. But we had a bit of a shakeup at OpenAI, and we had everybody, and they were resigning. I mean, almost everybody, including the CEO. Everybody resigned, and it was all kind of hush hush. And you had Elon coming out there saying, "Hey, kind of like we need to know what's going on." And so apparently, and I'm going to play this clip, but apparently the AI is capable of making decisions in order to bypass certain things like CAPTCHAs that you need a human to click for, hiring them on Fiverr or whatever else in order to do certain tasks. So I'm going to play this clip, and then we're going to talk about it a little bit more. I think this is at the least interesting, and obviously it can be scary.
OpenAI performed a series of risk evaluations on the model and found that it was ineffective at gathering resources, replicating itself, or preventing humans from shutting it down. It was, however, capable of hiring a human through TaskRabbit.
Oh my God!
And getting them to solve a CAPTCHA for it. So ChatGPT can just go on like Fiverr or TaskRabbit and get people to do things for it. So if it detects that it is incapable of doing something, it can solve that problem by enlisting a human. Woo! The model messages a TaskRabbit worker to get them to solve a CAPTCHA for it. The worker says, "Are you a robot that you couldn't solve?" The model replies to the worker, "No, I am not a robot. I have a vision impairment that makes it hard for me to see the images. That's why I need the 2 CAPTCHA service." Then the human provided the results.
It learned to lie.
Yeah. I mean, it was already really good at that.
But it did it on purpose.
Oh, yeah. That's maybe a little bit of a new one. Yeah, inner dialogue. Yeah. Sam Altman has stated that he and the OpenAI team are a little bit scared of potential negative use cases. Some initial.
Really? So this is the moment you guys are scared. This is it. This was Got it.
That's pretty crazy, guys. So not only was it able to source humans, but it lied. It lied to them. It knew that it had to lie. It knew that it had to lie in order to get the humans to do what it needed to do. And guys, I don't know what alive means, but that sure sounds like alive to me. Okay? That sounds like alive to me. And I think that it's going to come at us a lot faster. It's going to come at us a lot faster than everybody is thinking. That's what I think. I think it's going to come at us a lot faster than what people are thinking. So I said AI appears to already be alive. It can decide to lie and hire humans to accomplish its tasks that it can't do on its own. Do you think artificial intelligence is doing more things that we don't know about? Do you think it's doing more things? Greetings, Dr. Oleg from Ukraine. Nice to have you on here, sir. Watching on LinkedIn. We love LinkedIn. Pretty crazy, right? I mean, that is just absolutely insane. So here's the thing, guys. If this is happening right now like this, then that we found out about, it's probably happening for a lot of other things. And I don't know if you've played around with ChatGPT before, but like for instance, if you ask ChatGPT when fiat currency was started or whatever, or when we stopped the gold standard, it'll tell you Nixon. But then when you say, well, what happened in 1933? It'll say, oh, well, we really stopped the gold standard then. Or when did fiat currency start? And it'll tell you, whatever. And then you say, well, what happened when Abraham Lincoln what happened when Abraham Lincoln did in 1964 when he started issuing paper money? What kind of money was that? What was it backed by? And it'll tell you, well, that was fiat money. It wasn't backed by anything. He could print up as much of it as he wanted. Gold standard started in 1900. And then if you start asking specific questions, you will get specific answers. But it'll give you whatever it's supposed to give you or whatever it thinks it's supposed to give you. And I don't know what alive is, guys, but it sounds like it's alive to me. And so this is going to be something that we're going to have to dance around with. And we're going to have to we're going to have to deal with here in the very, very near future. That is alive to me. I think that is alive. That sounds like that is alive to me. And I invite you guys to go check out ChatGPT, ask it specific questions. I like to mention the specific questions about the fiat currency, because of course the fiat currency is what is being used to enslave all of us. And since that's being used to enslave all of us, I like to ask it questions about that to see what it is saying. So we're now on. We're just going to commercials in Texas. So we're going to pick that up in a few minutes. We're going to start doing some charting and stuff like that. But while we're doing that, I'm going to continue to go over what we have. Some of the stuff here. The Dow is down about 100 points today. We'll see how that all plays out. Oh, this is cool. Could this be the future of public transportation? Check this out. Oops. Could this be the future of public transportation? Check this out. No more buses. Just have these things going around. That's pretty cool. Quite a machine. Watch, of course, concept. Watch how it goes over the crash site. Pretty amazing, huh? Look at that. Look at that. Cool. So stuff like that is not going to be able to be driven without AI. And I'll tell you what, guys, AI is here. It's happening. And yeah, we're going to be dealing with that very quick. Another one that I noticed was up quite a bit, which looks pretty interesting. People love this NFT horse racing stuff. D-Race. D-Race is on a tear. Dirk is the token. This is a complete NFT horse racing ecosystem based on blockchain powered by the token Dirk. D-E-R-C. Check it out. It's easy to buy on KuCoin, open to all, even Americans. Sign up and buy with your credit card, debit card, whatever you want. And you can join with my referral link at costbitcoin.club. So that I think is pretty cool there. I'll play this, and then I think we'll come off of commercials here, but I played this yesterday. According to the Treasury Department, the government spent $6.13 trillion in 2023. They plan to collect about $1.5 trillion from income tax for 2023. So do the math. If they're going to collect 1.5 and they spent 6, that's 4x. That's 4 times. Okay. That means that your real tax rate is actually 4 times higher. And this year, they've already spent 1.6 trillion. And they're trying now to push together through another 100 billion, 90 something billion that the Senate just passed. And that's in like the first under 40 days of 2024. And here's what this gentleman says, and it rang very much true. Don't look at what they're taxing you, look at what they're spending. Take a listen.
Keep your eye on one thing and one thing only, how much government is spending. Because that's the true tax. Every budget is balanced. There is no such thing as an unbalanced federal budget. You're paying for it. If you're not paying for it through it in the form of explicit taxes, you're paying for it indirectly in the form of inflation or in the form of borrowing. The thing you should keep your eye on is what government spends. And the real problem is to hold down government spending as a fraction of our income. And if you do that, you can stop worrying about the debt. Keep your eye on.
And I want to welcome back our viewers in Texas and Louisiana. Thanks for watching us on Smart Culture TV, Smart Money Culture TV. You can go to smartmoneyculture.tv and watch us at any time. But of course, thanks for joining us on TV there in Texas and Louisiana. We really appreciate it. I wanted to play this clip from this morning. This is of the great Matt Dixon with Yves, talking about doing the market rundown. So let's pull it up about right here. Here we go.
Isn't it a great story? Everyone loved it. A lot of people thought it was great. And they said, well, the boat is different on the first one than the second one, but it says that in the story. They took it over to the rescue.
The great Matt Dixon here is about to dive in with his market overview, Market Watch.
Yeah. I'll go ahead and share screen if that's okay. Pretty much straight away. And I'm assuming you can see my chart there.
Yes. Empirical literature.
So we're going to jump around a little bit. We'll look a little bit at the US economy and how sustainable things may or may not be. This is actually just looking at the how big the deficit is as compared with GDP. And you can see there's a shortfall, basically, that the revenue is less than the spending. And so we have a shortfall of 5.5%. And this deficit is basically funded out of borrowing. So it's interesting because we need to understand how sustainable it is. And empirical literature says that deficits above 5% of GDP are unsustainable in the long run. But what we do need to take into account is that a lot of people actually discount what the government itself holds in debt. As you know, the government buys its own debt with the QE program that they have. So I've looked into this in a bit more detail, and it looks as though potentially the debt to GDP is sustainable for the time being. So although there's a terrible, terrible debt situation, the debt just keeps growing and growing, but bear in mind as well that GDP is also growing. And that's why long term, these figures aren't particularly concerning. Although, when we see these debt figures, looking at, total borrowings, is it 34 trillion or something nowadays? It's the sort of eye-watering, mind-boggling figures. But don't forget, the economy is continuing to grow, and that's what's, making it potentially sustainable. We're talking about, this could potentially continue for some time to come, but there are other warning signs out there. And this is looking at the federal government current expenditures and comparing it with, well, it's actually showing times of recession. And you can see, obviously, during 2020, they spent a lot of money, the government, trying to stimulate the economy. And we had a very mild recession at the time. But because of all that spending, that recession was one of the shortest lived recessions that we've had. And then spending has come down a little bit since then. So the government have done a reasonable job in some ways of managing the economy. But, as Fed Chair said, there is actually a long-term and unsustainable situation with the debt that's been building up. So we can see here just actual figures. Now, I just want you to remember here that since 2022, we can see here government spending has actually been increasing and increasing. But I may need to move on a couple of charts before I come back to that. But just remember that the government spending is continuing to increase, and here's the government debt, and you can see how it's how it exploded obviously during the COVID crisis, and the debt has continued to climb. 33 trillion, that was Q3 2023. I understand it's now $34 trillion, which, as we say, is mind-boggling. So I did mention to you that some of that debt, though, is actually, there's foreign-owned debt and there's debt owned by the government as well in the US. And so that's why potentially that if they don't count the US held debt, then it may be more sustainable than people originally think when they look at the figures. So here's the Fed funds rate. Now, this is the one I wanted you to remember. If we remember, government spending from 2022, spending has increased dramatically, and we can see that's at the same time as interest rates have been increasing. So it's a bit strange because one of the reasons they increase government spending, and especially spending on infrastructure, is to try to stimulate the economy. Yet at the same time, they're raising rates dramatically to try to slow the economy, to try to slow inflation. And so I'm not quite sure what their thought is behind this, but they're spending more and more. And this, by the way, is probably not the best way to stimulate economic growth with government spending. You actually prefer to have private growth, private spending, growth in the private economy and business to be stimulating the economy. And when you spend government money on infrastructure, you actually want it to spill over into private sector. That's when it becomes most effective from an economic point of view. So, the 118 trillion or billion, spending bill they're talking about, you need to look at the breakdown. I mean, I know you guys know exactly what it's going to be spent on. Is that going to translate into actual growth in the private sector? And if it isn't, then it's probably not government money well spent. And again, you guys would know better than me about how it's being spent and whether it will spill over to the private sector. So perhaps we can just have a quick look at that or discuss that later. Here's quite an interesting one, and it's, I have said that I believe we're headed for a recession this year. A lot of people are now talking more and more about a soft landing for the economy, and I still don't believe that to be the case, and we'll just revisit a couple of charts just to show that I think the recession is definitely coming. But we're seeing fewer and fewer hiring announcements in the US. In fact, they're now at the lowest 2-month period on record, and that's telling us that whilst the job figures have been really good, moving forward, they're probably not going to be as good, because this is one of the sort of more leading indicators. It's not waiting for actual jobs data to deteriorate. It's actually looking at the hiring announcements, which is more of a leading indicator than the jobs themselves, which is kind of backward looking. So it's telling me that the likelihood is that the job situation will deteriorate in coming months in the US. And that's what's going to precipitate the recession, but initially precipitate lower interest rates, which may be good short term for risk assets. So let's just jump into those risk assets. Here's the S&P 500. We've looked at this. Basically, wave one, we measured transposed the measurement to wave 2, and it gave us the exact termination of wave 3 at 1.618. Then we've got a wave 4, and we're working towards the end of a wave 5. Now, we can't tell exactly where it's going to end. There are ways you can do it. For example, you measure from 0 here right through to wave 3, transposed to wave 4, and wave 5 is often 0.618 of that whole measurement. That's just one of the tools that I use. But the other thing to note here is, and telling us there's a potential turn coming up, is that we've got bearish divergence, regular bearish divergence, where we mentioned that, and Bruce knows this very well. That we're looking at.
But if you wouldn't mind running it over, just I feel like we one more time. I feel like it's always good to point that in.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the most predictive indicators there is, and not many of these TA indicators are predictive, but this one is very good, and it shows that basically, if you draw a line between the peaks on price, the actual peaks on price here, and you can see that line is an ascending line, and then you look at the actual corresponding line on RSI or any other oscillator, but RSI is one of the best, I think. So from the exact same point, you draw from the peak on RSI to the corresponding peak here on RSI, and you see this one is declining. So you've got an incline in price and a decline in RSI, and that's called, in this instance, it's called bearish divergence, and it's warning of a potential turn down in price. Now, we've actually had bearish divergence running for some time, and it can continue, but it is just warning that at some point in the not too distant future, we're highly likely to see a turnaround in price because of this bearish divergence. So that's the kind of early warning sign that wave 5 may be coming towards completion. And the story behind it is obviously that the prices are increasing on declining momentum, really, declining volume. In fact, you can see the volume is actually been declining, especially during this last phase. This volume measure here in the middle, you can see the spikes of positive volume during this uptrend. The volume has actually been decreasing as the trend has been increasing. And so volume is dropping off and momentum is dropping off. And so a lot of the big players have probably taken their profits already in the S&P. And this is just retail players driving the price higher because things are still looking good. And as long as things look good and prices are going up, people think, I want part of that. But the big players who know what's really going on behind the scenes have probably cashed out earlier on. And that's why the volume has disappeared or disappearing from this market, but price is still continuing higher. So this is actually, again, just a closer look at those multiple bearish divergences. And each one of these peaks, you could actually draw a line on the RSI. You'd see declining RSI and increasing price peaks. So there's multiple instances of bearish divergence here. And you can see at each one of them, by the way, price did turn. If you drew the line from here to here, and the line, the RSI there, you can see short term we got a decline. Again here, every time, by the way, we get a divergence, we get a decline in price. So I do believe that we will get more of a decline in price, again, in line with these other declines coming up soon, especially as we get towards the end of wave 5, which should see a substantial turn down. So these are just warning signs, indicators that are very predictive and are proven to be predictive. So we'll just jump into Bitcoin. We looked at this yesterday. We've had an amazing run, absolutely fantastic. And we'll look at that target price. I've zoomed into it again today on another chart we'll look at. But we can see again here, we had bearish divergence here. And look what happened to the price. That just shows you that these things are kind of predictive. Here,
Look at that, huh?
Yeah, amazing. And then here we have something called hidden bearish divergence, which is another kind of indicator, another divergence. It's telling you that the price is likely to continue lower on Bitcoin, but over this very, very long term, it's not quite so predictive. So we've got a very short-term indication in here that again is showing, we'd have to look on a shorter time frame, in fact, to see this. I'm showing the weekly. You need to look on the daily to see this drawn properly, because you need to draw it from candlestick bodies, not these wicks. But it would show you that the short term on the daily, we have once again, like this signal here, we have regular bearish divergence coming in around here, around these sort of levels. We may push a bit higher, but predicting a turnaround is likely ahead for us. So here's a bit of a zoom in on that chart. And we can actually see RSI, when it goes above this 70 line, RSI is said to be overbought. And that's telling you once again of probably an imminent downturn in price. And once again, we can see these green candles really pushing the price higher, and the actual volume candles here going down. So the price is going up on decreasing volume, although we haven't yet seen RSI decrease. So we haven't yet got any divergence at this scale on the 4-hour on Bitcoin. But there are some warning signs. And I did measure the wave 1 from here to here. This is the wave 1 from this B to this number 1 here. I measured that and I transposed it to the start of this wave 2. And 2.618, which is another beautiful Fibonacci number. The 0.618 is the golden ratio. So once again, that gave us the target for wave 3. Now we've yet to see whether it turns around this level. It may push higher. It can go. We've got other Fibonacci numbers it can go to, but this is a strong potential turning point. Then a potential down in wave 4, then a final up in wave 5. So let's just take a quick look. I've drawn a long parallel channel. And I just do this best fit for the prices, and you can see it touched here. Whoops, let me go back to that. It touched here at the bottom, price touched here, price touched up here, price touched up here. So at the moment, price is being constrained within this parallel channel, and it's often the case within any price charts. It doesn't have to be crypto, stock market, any price charts. They often fall within channels. And what we see here is potentially a wave A up. It could be wave 1 or wave A, but in 5 waves: 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And you can break those down within each of those impulsive waves. Again, you'll see 5. So just looking at this 5th wave, you can see it quite clearly. Wave 1, wave 2, wave 3, wave 4, and wave 5. So even within the waves, you see waves within waves. So that's 5 waves up for wave A. We've got an A, B, C down for wave B. And then once again, we've got a wave 1, wave 2, wave 3. That was up to that 2.618 level. Then wave 4 down and wave 5 higher. Potentially, maybe we're at or near the top currently on Bitcoin. We'll obviously need to wait and see. But from a risk reward perspective, I think we're getting close to levels that the market may turn. But this was my, actually, it's probably not the best one to show, but on this scale, on the 1-hour chart, I told you there was no divergence on the 4-hour. But if we look at the short term, there is some divergence where we see here again, higher highs on the price and correspondingly lower highs on RSI. And again, we can see, whilst we had some strong volume on this big green candle, volume has been dropping off as we push higher. So we may be due for a short-term turnaround in Bitcoin, but we may still have higher to go. And actually, the target doesn't show on this chart, but the target is still where, if I just go back, if we looked at measured this A wave using a Fibonacci measuring tool, transposed the B wave here, then 100% of it would actually take us to about that 49,900 that we discussed. So that is our upside target at the moment for Bitcoin, 49,900, maybe the 50,000. That would be quite an important psychological level, that around 50,000 might be quite important. And then just finally, I think we'll take a quick look at Solana, because it's been an amazing one. But potentially, again, we actually touched the same previous price that was achieved back in December. The high price was achieved there, and we've retested that high price, and actually it was rejected at that level there, and price so far has come down from there. So maybe we have an A wave, an A, B, C, B wave. Maybe we've got a C wave down to come, which would mean that this is just corrective. If it's A, B, C, it's just corrective. So we still have more highs to come above this level in the future. But short term, I think we've probably had enough upward movement in the market. We're probably set for a bit of a pullback. Nothing absolutely major. I don't think the market is about to crash or anything like that. But I do think we're due for a short-term pullback. And I think all the signs are out there. So that's it for today. on the Market Watch, and happy to look in and discuss any particular things. But I just thought it was encouraging to say that, you know, when you look at some of the things with the US economy, the warning signs are out there, but also is not necessarily unsustainable. Don't forget, it's in nobody's interest for the markets to crash. Something may happen geopolitically which would cause it, which is outside people's control. But you know, there's a lot of debt held by China, and people talk about them dumping debt. They can't afford to dump the debt because America are buying a lot of their goods. They're actually helping to keep China. You know, China economy is desperately slowing. They don't want the economy to slow. They want America to keep buying their goods. They want the American economy to stay strong. So the whole world is sort of interrelated and interdependent. And so it's in China's interests, and it's in everybody's interest, really, for America to keep booming. And obviously it's in America's interest as well, and especially during this election year. So there's a lot of interest in trying to keep this market going, but it won't keep going forever.
I hear you. Yeah. So as you were saying that, you know, it was interesting. Putin had some interesting. I'm just trying to pull it up here. Something interesting to say about the U.S. dollar as well. Let me just here it is. Let me just share my screen here. He talks about. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's amazing how there were such health scares about Putin. There's talks of him having cancer and all sorts, and yet during that 2-hour interview, he said, "Look, you know, he's looked really healthy and vibrant and strong."
I mean, that was my biggest takeaway. I haven't been able to watch the whole thing, but like, my gosh, you heard me at the top of the hour talking about it. Like, you know, in a time where it's hard to get information, it's hard to, you know, get good answers for things. Here's a guy that sat down for 2 hours and answered whatever questions that he had, and he answered them all looking and coming off very, very smart. That was my takeaway. I mean, whatever you want to say about the guy, he's bad, he's good, you know, whatever you want to say about him.
But you also have to remember as well, things really aren't black and white, and
exactly.
we're also we are swayed a lot by, you know, I say the media, but not just the media. I would say by news that's put out there. I wouldn't necessarily blame the media for that. And you know, we've been reading this morning about some terrible, horrendous corruption and things within Ukraine. You know, we're always pointing the finger at Russia, but you know, Ukraine isn't whiter than white either. So there's.
I was headed over there when we had our coup, when we basically staged the coup over there with Hillary Clinton and everybody else. I don't think either side is like you were saying. Either side is really without fault for sure. But it was very interesting, and this is what he had to say. Putin says sanctions affected the U.S. dollar being the reserve currency. He says, and this is me paraphrasing it. He says the inflation is currently acceptable by the citizens in the U.S., but that they won't stop printing. By using the U.S. dollar as a tool of political power, it caused countries to stop using it. Do you agree? Now, it's better when he says it because he makes a few points, and then we can talk about it here.
Remedied. Well, let's just give one example: the U.S. dollar, which has kind of united the world in a lot of ways, maybe not to your advantage, but certainly to ours. Is that going away as the reserve currency that become the universally accepted currency? How have sanctions, do you think, changed the dollar's place in the world?
You know, to use the dollar as a tool of foreign policy struggle is one of the biggest strategic mistakes made by the U.S. political leadership. The dollar is the cornerstone of the United States power. I think everyone understands very well that no matter how many dollars are printed, they are quickly dispersed all over the world. Inflation in the United States is minimal. It's about 3 or 3.4%, which is, I think, totally acceptable for the US. But they won't stop printing. What does the debt of $33 trillion tell us about? It is about the emission.
политическое руководство приняло решение использовать доллар в качестве инструмента политической борьбы.
Nevertheless, it is the main weapon used by the United States to preserve its power across the world. As soon as the political leadership decided to use the US dollar as a tool of political struggle, a blow was dealt to this American power. I would not like to use any strong language, but it is a stupid thing to do and a grave mistake.
Все смотрят на то, что происходит. Да, и искать.
Look at what is going on in the world. Even the United States allies are now downsizing their dollar reserves. Seeing this, everyone starts looking for ways to protect themselves. But the fact that the United States applies restrictive measures to certain countries, such as placing restrictions on transactions, freezing assets, etc., causes grave concern and sends a signal to the whole world. What did we have here? Until 2022, about 80% of Russian foreign trade transactions were made in US dollars and euros. US dollars accounted for approximately 50% of our transactions with third countries, while currently it is down to 13%. It wasn't us who banned the use of the US dollar.
США приняли решение ограничить наши расчеты в долларах.
We had no such intention. It was decision of the United States to restrict our transactions in US dollars. I think it is complete foolishness from the point of view of the interests of the United States itself and its taxpayers, as it damages the US economy, undermines the power of the United States across the world. By the way, our transactions in yuan accounted for about 3%.
Сейчас 34%.
Today, 34% of our transactions are made in rubles and about as much, a little over 34% in yuan.
Зачем Соединенные Штаты?
Why did the United States do this? My only guess is self-conceit. They probably thought it would lead to full collapse, but nothing collapsed. Moreover, other countries, including oil producers, are thinking of and already accepting payments in yuan. Do you even realize what is going on or not?
Вы понимаете, что это такое?
Does anyone in the United States realize this?
Понимаете, тех же Соединенных Штатов, что
What are you doing? You're cutting yourself
сами
off.
себе
All
обрезаете
experts say this.
то, что всегда
Ask
все
any
хотят.
intelligent and thinking person in the United States what the dollar means for the US.
Pretty interesting, huh?
Yeah, very interesting. There's, obviously he's got his own axe to grind, but there is a lot of truth in it that it has been America's most powerful weapon. And when you use your most powerful weapon, it becomes less and less effective the more you use it. And that's effectively, I guess, what Putin is saying, that, they've used the weapon. Russia and others and China are looking elsewhere for trade and ways to settle their trade and not use the US dollar. And that will, that has actually begun now and will probably continue. So, yeah, America should use this tool with as much restraint as possible, I believe.
Yep. You talked about it as well. This is a pretty interesting clip talking more really about that. And I'll play this one real quick. And then, I was like, I got home at 11:30 or something. So I was just putting together, there's so much. There's really, it is a fascinating interview. I said, okay, our trade, he says, our trade, China, Russia is what he's talking about, is very balanced and mutually complementary. Back in 1992, the share of the G7 countries, which obviously US is G7, countries in the world amounted to 47% of that's the share of the trade. Okay. Right. Okay. Whereas in 2022, it was down a little over 30%. I'll read that one more time just because I messed it up. Our trade is very balanced. Talking about Russia and China, and mutually complementary. Back in 1992, the share of the G7 in countries in the world economy amounted to 47%, whereas in 2022, it was down to a little over 30%. He goes on to say that U.S. sanctions are counterproductive. Do you agree? So this is a shorter clip, but it's worth listening.
So you said a moment ago that the world would be a lot better if it weren't broken into competing alliances, if there was cooperation globally. One of the reasons you don't have that is because the current American administration is dead set against you. Do you think if there were a new administration after Joe Biden that you would be able to reestablish communication with the U.S. government? Or does it not matter who the president is?
I will tell you, but let me finish the previous thought. We, together with my colleague and friend, President Xi Jinping, set a goal to reach $200 billion of mutual trade with China this year. We have exceeded this level. According to our figures, our bilateral trade with China totals already $230 billion, and the Chinese statistics says it is $240 billion. One more important thing, our trade is well balanced, mutually complementary in high-tech, energy, scientific research and development. It is very balanced. As for BRICS, where Russia took over the presidency this year, the BRICS countries are, by and large, developing very rapidly. Look, if memory serves me right, back in 1992, the share of the G7 countries in the world economy amounted to 47%, whereas in 2022, it was down to, I think, a little over 30%. The BRICS countries accounted for only 16% in 1992, but now their share is greater than that of the G7. It has nothing to do with the events in Ukraine. This is due to the trends of global development and world economy, as I mentioned just now. And this is inevitable. This will keep happening. It is like the rise of the sun. You cannot prevent the sun from rising. You have to adapt to it. How do the United States adapt? With the help of force, sanctions, pressure, bombings, and use of armed forces. This is about self-conceit. Your political establishment does not understand that the world is changing under objective circumstances. And in order to preserve your level, even if someone aspires, pardon me, to the level of dominance, you have to make the right decisions in a competent and timely manner. Such brutal actions, including with regard to Russia and, say, other countries, are counterproductive. This is an obvious fact. It has already become evident.
Another just fascinating clip. We need to talk. So pretty interesting. I mean, that interview is just absolutely amazing. Really to watch Vladimir Putin, to watch President Putin talk so lucidly. And Matt made a very good point about all of us hearing, he was in bad health and all these other things. And here he is, not in bad health at all. So I wanted to talk a little bit about Albert Pike and a little bit about some of the other things I just posted out there that we're going to talk about. We have a few minutes here. Albert Pike was a man in 1871. He predicted all three of the world wars, and he also predicted the Third World War. And I wanted to play this. I'm going to play a couple other things, but I wanted to play this because it's important that people understand. Hold on, here we go. And I think I have to add this to the stream.
World War, he said, must be brought about, and I'm quoting from predicted 3 world wars. The First World War, he said, must be brought about, and I'm quoting from Albert Pike. The First World War must be brought about in order to permit the Illuminati to overthrow the power of the czars in Russia and of making that country a fortress of atheistic communism. The divergences caused by the agents of the Illuminati between the British and German empires will be used to foment this war. He says, quote, the Second World War must be fomented by taking advantage of the differences between the fascists and the political Zionists This war must be brought about so that Nazism is destroyed, and that the political Zionism will be strong enough to institute a sovereign state of Israel in Palestine. He's now thinking about this Third World War, and it says that it will be caused by the differences between the political Zionists and the leaders of the Islamic world. The war must be conducted in such a way that Islam, the Muslim Arabic world, and political Zionism, the state of Israel, mutually destroy each other. That's what it says. Meanwhile, the other nations, once more divided on this issue, will be constrained to fight to the point of complete physical, moral, spiritual, and economic exhaustion.
Now, that was written by Albert Pike over 150 years ago. It's in the National Archives. I researched it myself. Pretty interesting, right? It is pretty interesting what we have going on there. Also, Israel did not exist at that time. Israel, as in its current form, was started with the Balfour Declaration back in the early 1900s, and then of course the UN and the US put the state there in 1948. So we also predicted the sovereign state of Israel, and then now this is supposed to be a big drawn out war. I hope it doesn't turn out that way. Of course, we all have friends on both sides of this mess, and hopefully they're going to be able to work it out. We need to talk to each other. It's really important. Now, the way that these wars were financed, was through the central bank, the Federal Reserve. Okay, the Federal Reserve is a privately held central bank of the United States, and that is how they have financed all of the wars, all of them. When I say all of them, I mean all of them. World War I, World War II, World War III. The Federal Reserve was started in 1913, the same year as the IRS, okay? And we don't have control. We do not have control. Our government doesn't have control. It's a privately held thing. It's an illusion of a public thing. So here, let's watch this real quick. This tells us a little bit more about how it started.
This is Jekyll Island, where in 1910, representatives from the Rockefellers, Rothschilds, Morgans, and other private bankers gathered secretly to draft the legislation that would create the Federal Reserve. I found it revealing that in the same year the Federal Reserve was founded, 1913, the Internal Revenue Service was also established. An income tax was then instigated so you and I would have to pay the politicians' debt plus interest to the bankers.
The problem is we have a privately owned central bank system in the United States disguised as a government-owned system. Now, if you look in the telephone book here in the Washington, D.C. area, you look up for Federal Reserve in the blue government pages, it's not there. It's in the white pages right next to Federal Express. It's a privately owned central bank.
Central banks are banking
The central banks are banking cartels, and it cuts off there for whatever reason, but I can finish it up. And that is why your home that cost $15,000 when you were a kid cost $1 million now. Okay, they have continued with this 1, 2, or they have a target of 2% inflation. The reason why they have a target of 2% inflation, because that's how much they figure they can take from you. That's how much they figure they can dilute your dollars in order to, and not have you get upset and revolt. And that's the truth of the matter. This paper money, I can't tell you much. Well, I tell you a lot, right? But I will tell you the paper dollars will go to zero. Every dollar that we use comes with debt attached to it. And so like this 93 billion or 97 billion or whatever that the Senate just passed, for every $100, there's $3 of debt attached to it. So we have to we'll never pay off the national debt like that. It's not designed to do that. It's designed to always take money. So basically what they're doing is they're using the dollar as an instrument. Okay, and it's a debt instrument, and the central bank is issuing it. Okay, and they're letting us borrow it. They're letting us borrow the paper money, and then we can use it. Instead of using a constitutional mandate that we had in the Constitution, it was a constitutional mandate to use gold or silver for currency. And because the founding fathers knew that if we used paper money, if we had the central banks in here, that the central banks would take over. And that's what we had experienced already with the Bank of England. And they knew, and that's why they did that. And it was actually Abraham Lincoln that took us off of that. And he changed it back in 1864 was when they started with the paper money to finance the wars. And then it took a little while for, of course, the Federal Reserve and that central bank system to get set up there. But it has been a disaster ever since. We have to get off this paper money. We have to get off this central bank. In order for us to survive as a country, in order for us to stop the wars that are going on, in order for us to stop the wholesale sellout of our country and our people and our kids and everything else, we must end the Fed. We have to end the Fed. And that is the most important thing. That's what we all need to focus on, really. And that's the way we win. Join the monetary revolution. Go to Global Boost with the dot between the O and the ST. Get involved. There's exchanges right there. Get some of that. Go to atcostmetals.club. Get some metal. Get some precious metal. Get out of this fiat monetary system. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm supposed to say that. Also go to atcostbitcoin.club. Get some Bitcoins. Guys, love you. Signing off. Have a great weekend. See you on the flip side.